Have you ever told someone a secret you thought was safe, only to have it quietly used against you later? Have you ever wondered why even the strongest relationships can shift the moment you share too much? What if silence, not speech, is the true sign of wisdom and power? Today we dive deep into the subtle art of discretion, because sometimes the things you never say are the very things that protect your peace, preserve your dignity, and build unshakable inner calm. This isn't about fear, it's about mastery. And it starts with what you keep to yourself. Have you ever trusted someone so deeply that you thought, "I can tell them everything," only to later realize that very trust came back to hurt you? If so, you're not alone. We've all faced that painful moment where something we shared was misused, misunderstood, or quietly passed along. It leaves a sting, a sense that perhaps some things are better left unsaid. Here's a hard truth. Most people overlook, no matter how good your relationship is, whether it's your lifelong best friend, your spouse, or even your parents, there are some things you should always keep to yourself. Why? Because the moment a word leaves your lips, it no longer belongs to you. It becomes exposed, vulnerable. And in a world where emotions shift, loyalties waver, and people are rarely as solid as they seem, your peace deserves stronger protection. That's exactly what today's message is about. 8 things you should absolutely keep confidential. These aren't just surface-level tips. They're rooted in timeless Stoic wisdom, passed down from thinkers like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus. These truths are shields, armor for the mind and spirit. Especially number 7. It's the kind of misstep that doesn't just cost you a friendship, it can quietly destroy the trust in a family. So don't just listen, reflect. Save this video, re-watch it. Share it with someone who's learning to move more wisely through life. And if you're serious about building emotional resilience, hit subscribe. Because this is where your true strength begins. Let's start with the first thing you should never reveal. 1. The money in your pocket. No matter how close your bond is with someone, resist the urge to share your financial details. Not your salary, not your savings, not the numbers in your investment accounts. Because once those numbers become public knowledge, your relationships begin to shift in ways you might not even see until it's too late. Let me tell you a story. In a quiet Ohio town lived a retired carpenter named Gerald. He was the picture of simplicity, flannel shirts year-round, a flip phone, tomatoes growing in his backyard. People assumed he was getting by on a fixed income, scraping together enough from Social Security to live modestly. But what they didn't know was that Gerald had spent decades investing in small plots of land, quietly, strategically. No one saw it coming when he sold one of his properties and walked away with close to $800,000 in cash. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't greedy. His only plan was to live his final years in peace and leave something behind for his grandchildren. But one night, over drinks at the local VFW, Gerald slipped. He casually mentioned a property sale. Just one comment, one sentence. That's all it took. Within weeks, things changed. A distant cousin showed up with an emotional story and a medical bill in hand. A neighbor hinted at a business opportunity they could get rich from together. Even Gerald's own daughter started talking about inheritance fairness and what he owed the family. Strangers began watching his home. Whispering followed him through the aisles of the grocery store. His peace, the one thing he had valued above all, was gone. So Gerald made a choice, a drastic one. He donated most of the money anonymously to charity. He quietly set up a trust for his grandkids. Then he disappeared, moved into a cabin outside of town where no one could find him. And there in the silence, Gerald finally found peace again. What Gerald understood, what the Stoics have always taught, is this: when your sense of safety is tied to something external, especially money, that security becomes your vulnerability. The more people know about your wealth, the more their projections come into play. Their envy, their expectations, their manipulation, it all seeps in. And it doesn't just change them, it changes you. Marcus Aurelius warned against dependency on externals, not because wealth is inherently evil, but because our attachment to it can quietly poison the soul. Stoicism urges us to live with detachment, to value peace over prestige. You protect your life not just by guarding your wallet, but by guarding your silence. Gerald didn't lose his life to greed. He saved it with wisdom. And if we listen carefully, so can we. Coming up next. What's the second thing you should always keep secret, no matter how deep the bond? Turn the page to discover a truth that may save you from a lifetime of emotional exhaustion. In the previous section, we explored why revealing your financial details, even to those closest to you, can quietly unravel your peace and safety. Now, we turn to something even more delicate: the secrets of the heart. Because not every memory, not every scar, not every vulnerability deserves an audience. 2. Your past love story. The second thing you should never speak too freely about, especially around those who don't hold your trust with care, is your past love. Not because love is shameful, but because, when shared carelessly, it becomes a chain, a heavy, invisible weight that binds your heart to what's already behind you. It's easy to romanticize vulnerability, to believe that opening up about your heartbreak is a sign of trust or strength. But Stoic philosophy teaches there's something deeper, that suffering doesn't come from what happens to us, but from how we choose to carry it. Epictetus put it simply: it's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Think about it. How many times have we relived a breakup, not for closure, but out of habit? I once met a woman named Carolyn. She was in her late 50s, divorced for over 20 years. And yet in nearly every conversation, she brought up her ex-husband's betrayal. Not because she missed the man, but because she was still mourning the version of herself she couldn't seem to let go of. It wasn't about memory. It was about attachment. Carolyn thought she wanted closure. What she actually needed was acceptance. And that's where Stoicism offers clarity. It tells us that peace doesn't come from having all the answers. It comes from learning to release the questions. A Stoic doesn't chase after what has already walked away. A Stoic doesn't cling to what-ifs or replay old wounds like a song on repeat. Love that's gone is not your identity. It's part of your timeline, not your character. You cannot force someone to stay. You cannot rewrite an ending. But what you can do is choose how much space that story takes up in your present. If you truly want to heal, stop telling the story. Stop looking for sympathy from those who weren't there. Turn inward. Embrace silence, not as avoidance, but as discipline. Each time you revisit a wound out loud, you deepen the scar. You don't heal by repeating pain. You heal by reframing your response to it. The Stoic path isn't about being heartless. It's about being clear-eyed. It's about learning when to hold on and when to let go. So instead of asking why it happened, ask, why am I still carrying this? And more importantly, who could I become if I finally set it down? 3. Your weaknesses and personal secrets. The third thing to keep sacred, regardless of how close the relationship may seem, is the intimate knowledge of your own weaknesses, your fears, insecurities, and quiet vulnerabilities. Not because honesty is a flaw, but because the world does not always respond to openness with kindness. Vulnerability, when shared too quickly or with the wrong people, becomes ammunition. There's a difference between being authentic and being reckless with your trust. Years ago, I worked with a man named Daniel. Brilliant, hard-working, but emotionally transparent to a fault. In an attempt to form deeper connections at work, he confided in colleagues about his self-doubt. He shared how he sometimes froze during presentations, how he felt like an imposter, how he was terrified of disappointing his family. At first, his openness was met with empathy, nodding heads, supportive words. But as time went on, something shifted. People stopped seeing Daniel as a capable leader. They began to view him as fragile, uncertain, unfit for pressure. And when a management position opened up, someone he considered a friend quietly mentioned to the leadership team that Daniel might not be ready due to his own confidence issues. The worst part? The doubt that cost him the role came from his own words. People change, interests shift, and when tensions rise, even the kindest colleague may use what you revealed in trust as a stepping stone for themselves. The Stoics were well aware of this. They taught discipline in thought but also in speech. Marcus Aurelius reminded us to speak little and only when necessary, not because words are dangerous, but because they are powerful. A Stoic doesn't overshare. A Stoic doesn't parade their wounds in the town square hoping for understanding. They know that true strength is quiet, that not every truth needs to be told, and certainly not to everyone, because here's the truth. The more people know about your soft spots, the easier it is for them to press where it hurts. That doesn't mean hiding who you are. It means guarding who you are. It means choosing your confidants wisely, and it means realizing that not every heart has the maturity to carry your story. Speak honestly, yes, but speak selectively. Because not everyone who listens with good intentions. Up next, there's another silent mistake many of us make. One that doesn't feel like betrayal, but can quietly erode respect. In even the strongest relationships. On the next page, we'll explore the fourth thing you should always keep to yourself. In our last section, we uncovered the danger of revealing personal weaknesses too quickly, and how even a well-meaning moment of vulnerability can be misused. Now we continue with another deeply personal truth. What happens when we share too much of our pain, and what Stoicism teaches us about preserving our peace. Because a Stoic knows this. Not every truth belongs in the spotlight. Some truths are sacred. They belong to silence. There's also a psychological truth at play here. When you downplay yourself in front of others, hoping to appear more relatable or be liked more, you don't gain respect, you lose it. It's called the broken glass effect. Just like a cracked window left unfixed sends a message that the building isn't cared for, the same applies to your image. If you show others that you are comfortable undervaluing yourself, they begin to see you that way too. Bit by bit, their respect for you starts to fade, not out of malice, but out of subtle cues you've unconsciously given them. Self-deprecation may feel like humility, but too often it's erosion. And erosion doesn't win trust, it invites disregard. Many people share their struggles hoping it will build connection. And while there is a time and place for vulnerability, when shared with the wrong audience, it doesn't draw people in. It exposes you to harm. It turns you from a person into a target. But here's where the Stoic mindset makes all the difference. The Stoic life is not about pretending to be perfect. It's about cultivating composure. It's about choosing when to speak and when to remain still. Protecting your inner world with silence, not lies but discernment. Yes, there is strength in being known, but only by those who have earned that right. Choose your confidants wisely. Never hand someone a weapon they might one day use against you. You may think you're bonding through honesty, but the wrong person will see your openness as an opportunity. If this insight resonates with you, share your thoughts below by commenting yes. Your voice matters, and these conversations are the foundation of our growth. The mistakes of your past. Now let's turn to the fourth thing you should keep private, the mistakes and pain from your past. Have you ever found yourself in a moment that felt genuine, maybe over coffee, maybe late at night, where you started spilling your past heartaches, betrayals, or humiliations. You hoped for comfort, maybe even closure, but what you often get is regret. At first, opening up feels liberating, like shedding emotional weight. But the more you talk, the more those wounds reopen. And what you thought would be healing becomes a replay of your own trauma. There's a danger in constantly revisiting the past. Each retelling isn't always cathartic. Sometimes it's just rehearsal. You begin to wrap your identity around your suffering. It becomes the story you know best, the one you keep performing whether or not anyone asks to hear it. And let's be honest, not everyone listening is there to support you. Some might offer kindness, others will nod politely, but many are just passing through. And a few, they're quietly entertained by your pain. It's a bitter truth, but a necessary one. The world doesn't pause because you're hurting. Your pain may be personal, but it's not always precious to others. The Stoics warned us about indulging too much in emotional expression. They believed our peace isn't found in being understood, but in understanding ourselves. 5. Marcus Aurelius said it best. When you are distressed by something, it isn't the thing itself that troubles you, but only your judgment of it, and you have the power to change that judgment. So when you feel the urge to share your darkest memories, ask yourself, is this for healing or is this for validation? Many confuse self-expression with self-liberation. But there's a line. Sharing too much of your past becomes emotional self-sabotage. You want connection. You want to be seen. But what you're really doing is asking others to carry something they didn't ask for and trusting that they'll handle it gently. Often they don't. And deeper still, when you continually revisit your old wounds, you're not just remembering. You're hoping for a rewrite. You want someone to confirm that you were right, that you were wronged, that you deserved better. But the past doesn't rewrite itself with validation, and dragging it into every present moment doesn't heal it. It defines you. That's the danger. Stoicism teaches us that we are the guardians of our own minds. That resilience is forged not through noise, but through quiet discipline, through reframing, through acceptance. So if you're still carrying a story that no longer serves you, stop performing it. Stop offering it up to every stranger who will listen. Because healing doesn't come from being heard. It comes from being whole inside yourself. Next, we uncover another thing best kept close to the chest. It's something most people assume is harmless to share, but when spoken too freely, it can damage your relationships, your credibility, and your sense of self-worth. Previously, we discussed how casually spoken words about misfortune, those Friday words tossed out in humor or frustration, can quietly shape our mindset and our fate. Now, let's go deeper. What happens when that negativity becomes your identity? 6. The energy of your words inviting misfortune. Words, even the ones said with a laugh, carry weight. Speak them often enough, and they begin to echo, not just in the room, but in your life. I once knew a man, sharp, good-hearted, with a quick wit, but deeply pessimistic. Every interaction with him was laced with complaint or sarcasm. He'd say things like, "Watch me be the next one to get sick," or "Knowing my luck, I'll be the first to get fired." It became part of his personality, dark humor, worn like armor against disappointment. But then something strange happened. The things he joked about began to materialize. Health issues, job loss, a fractured marriage. He started to believe he was cursed. But he wasn't cursed. He was conditioning himself. Stoic philosophy teaches us perception is power. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." That applies not only to what you think, but also to what you say. When you speak constantly of misfortune, even in jest, you train your mind to expect it, and the mind, brilliant and obedient, begins to comply. Psychologically, this is called confirmation bias. Speak negativity often enough, and your brain begins to seek out the proof. You notice the problems more than the solutions. You see shadows in every corner. You begin to shrink, to second-guess, to self-sabotage. Tiny decisions rooted in fear, not purpose. There's also something ancient and spiritual at play here. Across cultures from the east to the west, there's the belief that the tongue holds power, to bless or to curse, to lift or to destroy. The Stoics may not have framed it in spiritual terms, but their teachings were clear. Guard your speech. Protect your peace through discipline of the mouth. So what should you do instead? Speak with intention, with clarity, with the energy of the life you want to build, not the life you fear might come. Don't joke about failure. Don't make light of disaster. If you want peace, speak peace. If you want good fortune, speak like someone who believes it's possible. Your words don't just shape the mood, they shape your direction. Your words are seeds. Be mindful of what you're planting. 7. The joy of success. Protecting the precious now for something more unexpected. Not sorrow, but joy. In a time when every achievement is shared online before it's fully lived, there's something quietly revolutionary about keeping your joy to yourself, not in secrecy but in sacredness. The 7th thing you should guard is the full radiant joy of your own success, not because pride is wrong, not because celebration is bad, but because not everyone clapping for you is happy for you. Some are, quietly counting the ways you've outpaced them. Others are smiling while secretly hoping you stumble, just enough to make themselves feel better. I once heard it said, people can mourn with you more easily than they can rejoice with you. And it's true. Many can handle your suffering. Few can genuinely cheer for your rise, especially when it reminds them of their stagnation. Stoicism teaches us to find joy in our progress, not in the praise of others. Marcus Aurelius urged us to do good work for its own sake, not for the applause it might bring. This isn't about hiding your light, it's about understanding that light attracts both warmth and insects. When you accomplish something meaningful, it's tempting to shout it from the rooftops. But consider this. Some things are more powerful when protected. There is a strength in privacy, a dignity in not needing validation. Success that is shouted about too quickly can invite envy, scrutiny, even sabotage. But success that is held close, lived fully, quietly, and meaningfully, grows roots. So when something good happens, when you land that opportunity, when your work finally pays off, when your vision starts to come to life, don't rush to post it. Don't race to prove anything to anyone. Let yourself feel it. Let it fill your lungs and your chest, and when the time is right, if the moment calls for it, then share it. Not to be seen, but to inspire. Because success, when it's real, doesn't need to be announced. It shows up in your energy, in your discipline, in your continued growth. We've now explored how to guard your finances, your past, your pain, your resentment, and even your joy. But there's still one more thing to protect, something many give away far too easily: your future. Stay with me for the 8th and final piece of this Stoic armor. We ended last with the idea that real success is carried in silence, not for secrecy's sake, but for sanctity. Now let's lean deeper into this Stoic principle by exploring how comparison and exposure can quietly distort your brightest moments. 7. The joy of success. Protecting the precious now for something more unexpected. Not sorrow, but joy. In a time when every achievement is shared online before it's fully lived, there's something quietly revolutionary about keeping your joy to yourself. Not in secrecy, but in sacredness. The 7th thing you should guard is the full radiant joy of your own success. Not because pride is wrong, not because celebration is bad, but because not everyone clapping for you is happy for you. Some are, quietly counting the ways you've outpaced them. Others are smiling while secretly hoping you stumble, just enough to make themselves feel better. I once heard it said, "People can mourn with you more easily than they can rejoice with you." And it's true. Many can handle your suffering. Few can genuinely cheer for your rise, especially when it reminds them of their stagnation. Stoicism teaches us to find joy in our progress, not in the praise of others. Marcus Aurelius urged us to do good work for its own sake, not for the applause it might bring. This isn't about hiding your light. It's about understanding that light attracts both warmth and insects. When you accomplish something meaningful, it's tempting to shout it from the rooftops. But consider this. Some things are more powerful when protected. There is a strength in privacy, a dignity in not needing validation. Success that is shouted about too quickly can invite envy, scrutiny, even sabotage. But success that is held close, lived fully, quietly, and meaningfully, grows roots. So when something good happens, when you land that opportunity, when your work finally pays off, when your vision starts to come to life, don't rush to post it. Don't race to prove anything to anyone. Let yourself feel it. Let it fill your lungs and your chest, and when the time is right, if the moment calls for it, then share it. Not to be seen, but to inspire. Because success, when it's real, doesn't need to be announced. It shows up in your energy, in your discipline, in your continued growth. We've now explored how to guard your finances, your past, your pain, your resentment, and even your joy. But there's still one more thing to protect, something many give away far too easily: your future. Stay with me for the eighth and final piece of this Stoic armor. We ended last with the idea that real success is carried in silence, not for secrecy's sake, but for sanctity. Now, let's lean deeper into this Stoic principle by exploring how comparison and exposure can quietly distort your brightest moments. Why comparison dulls celebration? Success can be a lonely path, not because it should be, but because human nature often struggles to cheer for someone who's risen from familiar soil. Marcus Aurelius understood this paradox. A Roman emperor with unmatchable power, he didn't commission grand monuments to glorify his victories. He journaled quietly, consistently, privately. Why? Because real power doesn't demand attention. It doesn't shout. It simply is. And that's where so many of us go wrong. In the age of social media and hypervisibility, we've forgotten the value of discretion. We've blurred the lines between celebration and exposure. The moment you share your win, your good news, or your elevation, it becomes public domain. Suddenly it's measured, compared, commented on, and not everyone clapping is clapping for you. Some people measure your joy against their stagnation. Your progress becomes their pain. They might not say it aloud, but you'll feel it in their withdrawal, in their changing tone, in the subtle way they stop showing up when you shine. Some won't even know why they're pulling away. It's subconscious, but you'll feel it nonetheless. And here's the deeper danger. When you speak too soon or too often about your victories, you risk tying your identity to the applause. You start to look for the response, to need the reaction, to crave the validation. And what happens when it doesn't come? Or worse, when it turns sour? You feel less than, even in your win. Stoicism teaches us not to be ruled by the opinions of others, not to depend on praise, because applause is loud but fleeting. True joy is quiet but lasting. So guard your triumphs. Let them bloom in silence. Celebrate not to prove, but to honor your own growth. Let your strength show up in the way you walk, the way you work, and the way you remain unmoved by both flattery and criticism. Because the truth is, the world is watching. Some out of love, some out of envy. Let them wonder. Let your life speak what your words do not. 8. Family matters. the painful cost of oversharing. Now we arrive at the final thing you must protect fiercely, the sacred details of your family life. I have a friend, Laura. Graceful, intelligent, kind. She never sought drama or pity. After a difficult divorce, she relocated, looking for peace and a fresh start. And for a while it seemed she'd found it. A new job at a media company, friendly co-workers, stability, a quiet space to heal. Then came the slip. During a lunch break, she confided in a colleague who seemed trustworthy. They shared stories, personal struggles, and for a moment, it felt like sisterhood. So Laura opened up. She mentioned she was living with someone, an older man, who had supported her through her darkest chapters. It wasn't scandalous, it wasn't shameful, it was her truth, spoken gently in confidence. But confidence, it turns out, was misplaced. By the end of the week, her story had made the rounds. No longer was she Laura, the competent editor. She was Laura, the woman living with a much older man. The gossip twisted the narrative. Her presence at work changed. The respect shifted. The glances became sharper. The conversations quieted when she entered the room. And with it, the peace she'd tried so hard to rebuild began to crack. Here's the brutal reality. Not everyone deserves to hear your story. Not because it isn't worthy, but because not everyone is capable of holding it with care. Stoicism reminds us to weigh our words before we speak, to share only with those who have earned the right to know. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." I'd add, your reputation becomes colored by the company you trust. The more intimate the detail, the greater the discretion required. In today's culture of tell-all, we've confused vulnerability with broadcasting. We've forgotten that privacy isn't shame, it's strength, especially when it comes to the delicate, tangled parts of family, your relationships, your pain, your rebuilding. These things belong in your inner circle, not your office, not your social feed, not your lunchroom table, because people talk, and when they do, it's no longer your story. It's theirs to reshape, distort, and weaponize. So what can we learn from Laura? Trust is precious and fragile, and once broken, its pieces don't fit back the same. Her lesson, and now ours, is simple but powerful. Protect what's sacred. Share slowly. Reveal intentionally. Speak not from a need to be seen, but from a desire to remain whole. Let your family story be your own. You've now seen how even the most innocent sharing can backfire. Financial truths, heartbreak, success, and even your past pain. But there's one final piece, perhaps the most dangerous of all, to speak carelessly: your future. In the next section, we'll explore why revealing your dreams too soon may be the very thing that keeps them from ever coming true. Whispers, judgmental glances, and subtle coldness began creeping into her workdays. Worst of all, her manager, the very person who once praised her dedication, began to question her professionalism. Not because her work had changed, but because her image had. It wasn't performance that brought her down. It was perception. 3 months later, Laura resigned quietly, just as she had arrived. She left not with failure, but with a bitter lesson. People may smile, but not all of them are safe with your truth. That's why the 8th and final thing you should never share too easily is your family matters. No matter how unfair, how painful, or how personal, it rarely helps to hand those stories over to outsiders. In fact, it often does more harm than good. People may listen, they may offer sympathy, but very few will carry your story with the care it deserves. Many will observe, some will judge, and a few will talk. What you meant as a moment of vulnerability may be twisted into gossip or ammunition. It's not always malicious, but it's almost always careless. Stoic philosophy teaches us not to suppress pain, but to manage our response. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You can endure anything so long as you don't exaggerate it in your own mind." The same applies to what we say aloud. Grown-ups don't need to scream to be understood. They speak with intention, and sometimes that means saying nothing at all. Some stories are sacred, and when exposed, they only become more fragile. Sharing your family's conflicts, distance, or struggles doesn't fix them. It only hands them to people who have no responsibility to protect your peace, and often those people can make things worse, knowingly or not. If you truly want harmony in your home, don't drag your private pain into public arenas. Sit down with your loved ones, look them in the eye, speak to them, not about them. Keeping things private isn't deception, it's devotion, it's choosing to prioritize peace over temporary relief. And in a world where every detail is shared online, the power to hold your silence becomes rare and revolutionary, because your peace doesn't come from saying everything. It comes from knowing what to keep to yourself. The 8 things we've talked about aren't just personal. They're powerful. They are shields, boundaries, guardrails that protect your energy, your dignity, your future. You're not hiding. You're honoring. Not everyone who listens deserves your deepest truths. And if you've ever shared too much and paid the price, you're not alone. But you can choose differently now. Let this be your moment. Speak with clarity, share with intention, and protect the sacredness of your story. Because the less they know, the safer you grow. If you found value in this video, take a moment to subscribe and turn on notifications. We're building a space for thinkers, for seekers, for those who want to live wiser, deeper, and stronger. And if this resonated with you, share it with someone you trust, someone who needs it. Because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more voices that know when to stay silent. Stay wise, stay grounded, stay resilient, and I'll see you in the next one.